This video includes discussion of people being hit, and in some cases killed, by cars. I won't be using any footage or images of people being hit, but some of the discussion will get intense.
The world is weird, it makes me mad, but at least I get to talk about it with Jose.
On July 4th, on the I-5 freeway in Seattle, Washington, two Black Lives Matter protesters, Summer Taylor and Diaz Love, were hit by a car that had driven through their protest. The collision killed Taylor and left Love with critical injuries. The driver, DeWitt Khalid, was charged with vehicular homicide, vehicular assault, and reckless driving. The I-5 freeway had been shut down by police at the time, as it had over the previous 19 days of protests that had also taken place on the freeway. Police suspect the driver entered the I-5 freeway from an exit ramp along Stewart Street. He would then have needed to perform a U-turn and driven roughly 1/4 of a mile before reaching the protesters. As the driver approached the 30 or so protesters, he drove around the two cars set up as barricades and then hit both Taylor and Love. The collision occurred at roughly 1:40 a.m. After the collision, the driver slowed his car before driving off when several of the other protesters approached him. He was later arrested by police. The driver reportedly was not intoxicated at the time, according to a field test performed by police, but in court documents it was stated that he was dealing with an untreated addiction issue involving Percocet, a substance that appears to be crystal meth, and several implements commonly used to smoke illegal substances were found in his car. According to police, the driver expressed concern for the well-being of the two people he hit. Khalid's lawyer has claimed that there was nothing political about the incident. With the most charity I can muster, this could be considered an incident of reckless driving, possibly under the influence of drugs, leading to the death and severe injury of two people. As someone looking at the evidence, it's difficult to ascribe any specific intent to Khalid. According to the individual who first published video of this incident to Twitter, and who was a witness at the scene, the driver was acting deliberately. But something else happened after this horrific moment. The footage of the accident went viral, and an apparatus of conservative spin kicked into gear. After the footage of the collision was posted to Twitter, the tweet was spread by Ian Miles Chong. He made a series of tweets claiming the protesters were responsible for getting hit. It is illegal to block an interstate, plain and simple. Police say that the driver involved in the Seattle I-5 hit is being interviewed and will likely be charged with aggravated assault and a hit and run. But the fault is of the protesters for blocking the interstate. He also went on to spread misinformation about the incident. The two people who got hit look like they ran back into the path of the car after it swerved to the left to avoid the other protesters. Why the hell? The problem with the protest group, and you can watch the full 2-hour live stream, is that they moved onto the freeway without informing the police about their whereabouts, so police couldn't properly seal off the area because they received little notice. Not only were police aware, they had barricaded entrances to the freeway. These protests on the I-5 had been going on for 19 days, and according to this tweet, they had closed the highway nearly 2 hours before the incident. Ian, like some other people we'll be looking at, is determined to present a version of events where a driver who sees cars parked on a freeway surrounded by a group of 30 people has no expectation of even slowing down to a safe speed while passing. We saw similar takes from our dear friend in a beanie, Tim Pool. Sad to see anyone lose their life. We need to do better to teach our kids not to hang out on interstate highways at night while wearing all black around a curve and with vehicles blocking view of you and your friends. Helpfully, Tim gave us a video to offer some more nuance to his position.
At night, wearing all black.
Several protesters dressed in non-black outfits are clearly visible, and Summer Taylor, seen right here, is clearly not wearing an all-black outfit. Also, there are like 30 people here.
No lights at night.
There are, of course, lights all over the freeway. Maybe he means the protesters should have lights, but this is me guessing because all he ever says is, no lights. Regardless though, there's clearly enough lights to see the protesters from a distance, as evidenced by this camera showing us the protesters from a distance.
Think about this. You're on a highway. You're coming around a curve. All of a sudden, before you realize it, because it's at night and there's no lights, there's two vehicles in the middle of the road. What do? This guy swerved out of the way. When he swerved onto the shoulder, a ton of people were standing there. So what did he do? He swerved to the left. Pop, pop. And he hit two people, sending them flying, one of which is now dead. I can't believe they're charging this guy for this.
The very idea that 30 people were hidden behind two vehicles and that the driver couldn't have possibly seen these two vehicles blocking off the road until the last second is absurd. The bend Tim goes on about was roughly 600 feet away. That the highway had been empty for a quarter of a mile should have perhaps tipped him off that something was up. Tim's standard incompetence aside, we get to the real heart of this video later on.
Am I going to blame this guy because he was driving his car on the highway? That's ridiculous. If anything, the protesters should be held to some degree criminally liable for blocking a highway. It's a crime. Why aren't they getting in trouble?
This is, of course, not the first time Tim has lied about footage.
They're yelling, "Pop his effing tires," and you hear them deflating his tires, and then he slowly speeds up, and they all start screaming and banging on his... Actually, I'm sorry, they start banging on his vehicle first. Then he slowly speeds up. I don't want to say speeding, like he's inching forward, and then people start going, ah, yelling, and then once he's clear of protesters, he just goes, and takes off. That's it.
Tim went on to play the shakiest, least helpful footage he could find. But if you actually look up the video he cites, you'll see that this part in particular didn't make it into Tim's video. That looks a little dangerous to me. There's also no footage of what happened before the vehicle was stopped by protesters. So the story, in Tim's mind, only starts when we see the vehicle surrounded by protesters. How it got there, and in what way, cannot possibly be inferred because all protesters are liars. And evil.
Welcome to the modern era, where the activists will obviously lie about everything. Man, evil people, I tell you what.
I should offer a brief correction here. I used to think Tim was just a fool who had no idea what he was talking about. My position has evolved, and I'll issue a correction right here. I think he's deliberately misrepresenting the facts here. He's just not particularly bright in how he goes about it, or at least he has a very serious contempt for his audience and doesn't think they'll care that he's so transparently lying to them. But social media provocateurs are not the only people downplaying vehicular assault. Tucker Carlson's Daily Wire has previously released a compilation of protesters being accosted by vehicles, played to the tune of Ludacris's "Move, Bitch."
Move, bitch, get out the way, bitch, get out the way and move.
Daily Caller writer Blake Neff also published an article with this headline and subheader. Anti-Columbus Day protesters threaten to assault driver, get run over. White man overruns indigenous peoples with superior technology. Blake Neff, for the curious, was formerly the head writer for Tucker Carlson's Fox News show, but recently resigned after he was discovered to have participated in an explicitly racist message board for the last 10 years, often inserting the racist messaging from that board into scripts for Tucker Carlson. And of course, I would be remiss not to mention the death of Heather Heyer, who was murdered at the Charlottesville rally when a car ran into a group of counter-protesters. This incident was similarly spun by media figures and other assorted internet buffoons. Here's a brief example of YouTuber Carl Benjamin showing us his intellectual mettle.
It looks like what happened is that he was shocked by seeing the car crash happening and had a heart attack. It's really sort of... I know, it's horrible, but it does seem a very dramatic reaction to a car crash.
It's more that the alt-right are being blamed for someone having a heart attack. Someone in tremendously bad physical condition has heart attack, and suddenly the alt-right has murdered someone.
Mike Brown, a police detective for King County, which Seattle is a part of, posted a meme to his Facebook after Summer Taylor and Diaz Love were struck by a car. All lives splatter, keep your ass off the road. Brown is currently on leave, and the family of Summer Taylor has called for his firing. All this spin, all these distortions are done with the express purpose of changing the narrative. It wants people to believe that the protesters who are hit by cars are not victims, that they are either liars and frauds or somehow deserving of any injury or death that meets them while they are trying to exercise their right to protest. The reactions commentators like this generate on social media are particularly ghoulish. Who else here feels sorry for the driver and any damages to their car? And I honestly don't care if those idiots were removed from the gene pool. They were in the middle of I-5 at night, the height of stupid. I call this self-defense. Why are they blocking the road? What are they going to do to you if you stop? This guy didn't want to find out. No one wants to get ripped from their cars from the mob anymore. We've had enough. The effect on the audience, I think, is clear. working in tandem with messages describing protesters as violent rioters, particularly in the context of this story when the only violence expressed towards the driver came after he had just run over two people, is part of the goals of these anti-protest commentaries. The idea is to vilify the protesters and their message, and they'll ignore, distort, and lie about whatever facts they need to do that. Speaking to the New York Times, Ari E. Weil, the deputy research director at the Chicago Project on Security and Threats at the University of Chicago, described this growing culture of sharing memes about protesters being run over. It's not just an extremist thing here. There are social media circles online where people are sharing these and joking about them because they disagree with the protests and their methods. Sharing memes and joking about running over people can lead to real danger. This was echoed by Josh Lipowski, a senior researcher at the Counter-Extremism Project. There has been an increasing amount of propaganda online calling for vehicular attacks on protesters, targeting the Black Lives Matter movement in particular. It is being used as a form of intimidation against them to get them to halt their protests. According to research done by Weil, there have been at least 66 car attacks across the United States since George Floyd was killed by Minneapolis police on May 25, 2020. Of those 66, 24 have led to charges being filed, while 4 have been ruled accidents. Perhaps most disturbingly, 7 of these incidents involved police officers. Car attacks have become an increasingly common topic in recent years, and in response, some state legislatures have proposed bills that would protect drivers who unintentionally harm or kill protesters. Although there are some Facebook memes to the contrary, so far none of these bills have actually been passed. There is an awkward conversation to be had regarding the safety of protesters, whether it be staying as visible as possible at night or effectively communicating threats to others. Many protests do have earnest discussions and take precautions to keep people safe, and I think good-natured criticism on how that can be improved should be welcomed. But a sharp line needs to be drawn between constructive criticism to improve protests and criticism that's designed to undermine and discredit entire movements. When people such as Tim Pool or Mike Brown tell people to get off the streets, it isn't out of concern for the safety of protesters. It's because they want to discredit the very message behind the movement. When it comes to the individuals driving cars who crash through these protests, they're presented as victims of circumstance and not held to nearly the same level of responsibility of the protesters. Another thing lost in this discussion is that the safety of the protesters is not the only issue at play here. This is also about free expression. In the week leading up to me writing this script, free expression and cancel culture came up in the context of people being booted off very large platforms, such as the recent removal of Stefan Molyneux and Richard Spencer from YouTube. Every time this happens to a conservative, or in this case, white nationalist, there's an outcry from the right about how cancel culture is out of control and the left is constantly attacking the free marketplace of ideas. The free marketplace of ideas is an incredibly apt name in that it functions the same way a free economic market works in society today. The lack of regulation creates the guise of a lack of bias, ignoring how some people have been left out of the conversation, and that the playing field is most certainly not even. Taylor and Love, much like other protesters, were exercising their right of free expression, but instead of racing to their defense, people who supposedly care about free expression are bending over backwards to blame them for being hit by a car. We probably wouldn't even know the names of these two people had one of them not died and the other been seriously injured. In much the same way Black Lives Matter only gained traction when thousands of people took to the streets, demanding the attention of the mainstream media. The opposition to Black Lives Matter only needs to call up the New York Times to get some free space in the op-ed section of one of the most prominent outlets in the world to say it's time to call the military to bust the heads of these protesters. That is the disparity between people who have power in the marketplace of ideas and those who don't. One side of the argument needs hundreds of thousands of people in the streets, the other side needs a phone call, and suddenly their message is in front of millions. Someone who truly cares about free expression should be most concerned about protecting the expression and sometimes even holding up the expression of those with the least amount of access to that free marketplace of ideas. And this access cannot be entangled from the history of oppression that has denied people access to these spaces. Today, we probably have more female commentators now than any other point in recent history in the English-speaking world. In the past, women commenting on important issues would have to write under a man's name, like George Eliot had to do in the 19th century. Or if they did openly brush up against serious subjects, they would have to issue weird prefaces apologizing for daring to talk about workers' rights, which Elizabeth Gaskell had to do in her novel, Mary Barton.
I know nothing of political economy or the theories of trade. I have tried to write truthfully, and if my accounts agree or clash with any system, the agreement or disagreement is unintentional.
Although it should be said that things have improved since the 19th century, things have not quite reached parity, as seen by any woman who has recently tried to speak out about video games or some other important issues insecure men have a vested interest in, and things get dramatically worse for people who are even further marginalized, such as a trans woman being harassed for daring to appear on the cover of Sports Illustrated. While cancel culture is an interesting debate, it's not a debate that's happening on even terms. Conservatives seem chiefly concerned with protecting their own rather than broadening the free marketplace of ideas to include people who have been historically denied access. If you don't want to protect protesters from being run over by cars, you don't care about protecting someone's free expression at all. After the passing of Summer Taylor, their family held a brief press conference.
No matter how much I might want to ask them to stay safe during protests, they would just say, "Mom, if you are black in this country, it isn't even safe to be alive." And they were right. So even in death, we want Summer's passion as an ally to continue lifting up black lives in Seattle and all over our country. There is a lot left to do. Thank you.
Diaz Love is currently recovering from their injuries. They released a statement on Facebook reading, "I'm alive and stable, in a lot of pain. I cannot believe Summer was murdered. If they thought this murder would make us back down, they are very wrong. Very wrong. My FB is filled with death threats. That, and only being able to use one hand, has me going slow. I deeply appreciate and feel all the love y'all are sending me." I've included links to the GoFundMe pages for Summer's family and Diaz Love below. This was a tough video to do, especially since many of the details are not yet available. This case has not gone to trial, and the driver accused of the crime has not even been arraigned, so details are a bit sparse, but I wanted to focus on how someone's death and injury and how these car attacks in general are being spun to discredit very legitimate and valid protest movements. If you enjoyed this video, I would once again remind you that there are 2 GoFundMe pages for the victims linked below. If you would like to support my work, as many of the people going up the screen have, you can join my Patreon, and if you signed up for the $5 a month tier, you will get your name in the credits, like these lovely people here, a download to my theme song, written and performed by my lovely friend Dana, and early access to my videos. There actually is a video currently waiting to be uploaded to this channel that is available for my patrons. That's there if you're interested as well. Thank you everyone very much for watching this video. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell. I'll see you next time.